right, welcome to another episode of No Girls Allowed in the Locker Room. Of course, I'm joined with my great host because I didn't even intro you guys last week. Kayla Anderson and Walsh. Jill unfortunately could not join us today because she's out working. Ugh. But thank you, ladies, for coming on.
Thank you. And we're excited too because the first thing that we did when we were in the waiting room, waiting to do the podcast here, is we noticed that something was on your finger and it was just very bright and
Yeah.
sparkly.
I got engaged, you guys.
Is that right?
Oh my gosh, she has that fiance glow. She's just glowing with the ring.
My
That's beautiful,
voice.
by the way. I mean,
Bling
knocking it out
bling
of the
in
Gorgeous.
my
park.
Nene Leaks voice. I know he did a good job. He did a really good job. And it's from Genesis Diamond.
And you said you were surprised. Yeah, that's right, Genesis. I've heard a lot of nice jewelry there. There's one right here in Nashville too that looks to be maybe somebody that we could get on as a
Hello.
sponsor sometime in the future.
I did want to kind of segue into dating in what we do because I feel like we don't talk about that enough. And sometimes it can get a little weird in our industry trying to date or people being weird where you work. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, or just the day-to-day business working with athletes,
Right,
and knowing that,
right.
there's a lot of really great women in this business that deal with athletes on a daily basis. A majority of them that I've come across have been wonderful and very respectful. I've been doing this for 20 years and I don't have a ton of stories to say that I was disrespected in any means. Heck,
Mhm.
if I was disrespected by anybody, I believe it's been like a coworker. So for me, I've had
Yeah.
positive experiences, but also, guys, I've been married for 15 years now. So a majority of my career was when I was married. So I didn't really deal with being a single person in this business. I always
Mhm.
had, a significant other that has kind of come along for the journey.
Yeah, I would say for most of my time in the business, I have been in a relationship. So I guess it's an added layer in a sense to navigate being single doing this job. And it it can be difficult at times, I would say, especially when I'm dating or meeting someone new, especially who's outside of the business, because we're just so accessible and
Yeah.
we do have to have a public facing type of brand and accessibility to us. So with that, you just don't know, women in this business have been stalked and much worse. And so I don't say that this is my job like right up front. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
to say that I lie. I don't say necessarily like make up a profession, but I just say that I'm a reporter and sometimes they don't know if that means print or what have you, or I just don't say it for like as long as I can to make sure the person isn't like mentally unstable. Because they can just Google me and find my social media, and we have to be posting in a sense about what we're covering, and that lends to where you are
Yeah.
sometimes location wise. So, yeah, I think that it's definitely something that I try and be cognizant of and just kind of careful of and trying to, I guess, like I said, navigate this job as a single person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll even add to that too. Even being married, I remember my first kind of job that I had with, my partner, and it was a situation where I was being, in a way, stalked, and I immediately knew how I was going to move forward with how I was going to navigate being married and how much of my private life I was going to show and how much
Hmm.
I was going to keep behind the scenes because I just did not like what happened in that situation where they would know who my significant other was, and the more I opened that door, the more opportunities that somebody could kind of get into parts of my life that I don't want them to be a part of because I am a personality and I like people a lot, but they don't need to see everything. And so I made it a point, in that first job with with being married that I was like, I'm not going to say a lot about my partner. I'm not going to give out a ton about a lot of my personal life. You'll still see like, things that I do and friends that I have. But I think that I made that a point early on in my career. And really that's helped me not be in those situations as much as I've traveled across the country doing this job.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, this is what's the magic of editing too, is I was just yelling at my dog. So to add to Lauren's point though, it is really an interesting thing to navigate in our business. And I know right now the NFLPA is trying to kind of get all media out of the locker room. And it's been going on. We've been allowed in there for 100 years now. And it is interesting for women because, one of the first women back in the day to do it, I can only imagine what that was like for her. But so many of them have paved the way in terms of how to deal with that, still doing your job, but then also understanding you are being put in a kind of a weird situation with, men getting dressed and everything all around you. I just remember my first locker room I was ever in. And I guess I just had to come in with a mindset of, I'm in here to do my job. I am going to be as professional as I can, even if those guys try to distract you, which sometimes they want to be funny or you want to do those types of things. You've just got to have a one-track mind of you're in there, you're there to do your job. You can still build relationships with players, professional relationships, but you have to make sure you're doing it in the right way. And that's hard sometimes though when you're a female. Where is the balance there? It's always different for everybody, and every situation is different in the locker room. But there are some times that players don't get that, right? And they maybe feel like they can ask you out on a date or something on social media. Like that happens with so many people, and it's our job to kind of be like, well, sorry, but this is my job. I'm a professional, and that happens. It's a real thing.
Yeah. And see, men don't have to deal with this because
No.
as women, we know we're coming into a situation, it's professional, and we can lose out on interviews. It's happened to me where I have reached out to people and maybe that person has asked me out on a date and I declined. And then when I reach back out to them again to say, hey, like, can I sit down with you about this record or about whatever? And they're like, oh, now you want to talk to me. Like that has happened so many times, and it's frustrating because I am working. I'm doing my job, and because I didn't feed your ego and go out on a date with you, now you're prohibiting me from working, and I have to go back and tell my sports director, hey, I didn't get this interview because this guy wants to be a douche. Like it's just ugh.
And one more thing, Lauren, can I add one more thing to that?
Yeah.
I also feel like it prohibits our opportunities to, even if we wanted to break news, and I know it's rare in this day and age, but I'm not able to go up there and just get the phone numbers of players. Like that, we can't do that like some of our male colleagues do, and then are maybe able to break some of that news. I've been wanting to do that for years now, and because I feel like I have put in the work to build those contacts, but I still can't do that because I just feel uncomfortable doing it in the way that all these other people do it. It is what it is.
Yeah, and to the locker room point, I've read a book and watched some things on the lineage of locker room access, period. And then really it was focusing on women's access to locker rooms and how we weren't allowed in there for so long, really until kind of the 70s when some women trailblazers started breaking through, right? And some of those women, in what they were cited and quoted and saying in this book, was that they were like, hey, we didn't ask to interview players specifically in the locker room. That is a format that was set up by teams long ago. Teams chose that media will be allowed in the locker room for the immediate post-game reaction quotes that we all know we need for our stories. And that was a format that has stood to present day. So the fact that women were not allowed was obviously a gender barrier issue. And as more women got involved in covering sports, they eventually had to bend. But we're not necessarily asking for, hey, can we talk to guys while they're in towels?
Yeah.
It's the format that has been established by teams for decades now. And now that they want to change things, of course, it goes beyond just the gender issue. Now everyone will be impacted. And I think that's another topic, that there are many reasons why, especially post-game, locker room is beneficial to us in telling stories and trying to harness the human emotion in the game. So I think it'll be unfortunate if that format is drastically changed. However, I think it's interesting to note that it's the teams who established this precedent and leagues to begin with.
Yeah.
Good point.
I personally, I can only speak for myself. I don't like being in there.
You're like,
and y'all know, I
there.
tell y'all all the time, I hate being in here, like, especially on game day, because I feel like we are so dressed up and we are like, I mean, this is like our, like the pinnacle of our week. Like, we're like, okay, this is game day. We're here. And you walk in and it's just ass.
Yeah.
And I can't, it's just, I cannot do it. I hate it. I'm so glad I'm not in there anymore. But I will say, like, my fiance obviously played in the NFL, and he knows what goes on in the locker rooms. He knows how some women may be catcalled, or, you know, all of the things. And I think that he was a little uncomfortable because he's like, okay, Samaria, like, I know what happened when I was in the locker room, and are guys doing that to you? And I'm like, well, no, like, the Titans seem to be, I've only been in one locker room, and that's for the Titans, but they seem to me to be really, like, respectful. Like, nobody seems to be really extra or purposefully going out of their way to be, I don't know, nude.
Well, some guys don't even know that they're doing it because or changing right in front. I mean, that's got to be uncomfortable sometimes for them too.
Yeah,
exactly.
I know a lot of guys, you know, they have their towels and then they'll go get dressed under or underneath, you know, because they're trying to be available for these interviews that were coming up to them and asking about. That's one thing I've tried to do in a locker room like that is I let a player get their stuff together, get dressed, or get some sort of shorts or a shirt on before I even go and just be like, stick a mic in their face. I say, hey, you want me to give you some time, but I might come back around. Is that cool if I get you for this interview? Because, I mean, that's awkward in its own right for them to have to be going and getting a scrum and mics put in their face. I mean, it goes both ways, right?
Yeah, I either ask them when they're still in their full game uniform or in their full street clothes, to whatever extent they feel comfortable in their street clothes. Some of them, you know, maybe in like a wife beater versus their full like get up for the day. But still, some players prefer, I've found, to do it like when they're still sweaty, like before the shower, like, let's just knock this out. So I'm going for like either end of the spectrum of clothes, either uniform or street clothes. And like, if you're in between, like, I'm not going to be trying to like bang down your door for an interview.
Yeah. And I do feel like last season for me, I thought it was better because we were getting the guys before practice. So it seemed like a lot of them they were already dressed once we got in, at least in just like what they're wearing underneath. And then they were putting on their shoulder pads and grabbing their helmet and going out. Where now this year we're getting them after practice. So they're sweaty. So they want to immediately go and shower. But different coaching staffs.
Yeah, I know. That's not benefited any of us in any way with the hours that we're having to spend. But again, I'm not complaining. I'm glad we still have access, but you know, it is kind of
and it doesn't seem like it's benefiting them.
No.
Because they don't, I don't know what they got going on over there.
Not a lot of wins.
Did y'all go to Callahan's press conference yesterday?
No, but I listened. Lauren, I don't know if you
Same.
did. Okay.
Same. I was not there. Chris was there.
Yeah. What were you? I can see you're thinking here.
I just want to know what he has to say. I'm just really curious. I thought that he had favorable things to say about Cole Anderson.
You guys know I know him well, right? Colt Anderson.
No.
So yeah, this whole thing has been a little awkward for me, and I'm saying this for the first time on this podcast because I'm on radio in the mornings, and it's very listened to radio in this city. So I want to be as real as I can about my opinions on the situation, but I also know Colt very well and his family very well. I covered Colt back at Montana for 3 years. I know his wife really well, and it's a really great family. And I have always been a champion of Colt in his career because he really gained his special teams. Like it made a name for himself as being a special teams player. Like he made a career of that, being a special teams player, and then decided to go into coaching. So it's like kind of a weird line that, has been crossed now, because I have true opinions about the situation, because the special teams is a disaster right now. But at the same time, I don't want to dog on him and his family. So I've had to be really subjective about the whole situation. And I'm kind of in the middle when it comes to Callahan's choice not to let him go, because I think there are certainly things that could have justified him letting Colt Anderson go. But I also understand he's giving this guy a chance to be a coach in this league. And part of that, like Callahan is doing right now, is learning on the job. So I kind of am in the middle about this, but this is the first time really in my career I've had it that much intersected where you have to be like objectable.
Oh, I hate that. I didn't know that, Kayla.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, since I don't have a personal relationship with Colt Anderson, I will weigh in on the special teams situation, and Kayla, you acknowledge it's been a disaster.
Yeah.
I would use that word as well, where the Titans make special teams look hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's that big a task for special teams to not be a story. Because when you think about everything that we cover over the course of a game, and even earlier in the season, or maybe more recent games where there haven't been blocked punts per se, but then they're giving up these massive returns to the Lions. I mean, if you were to just do things in any level of an average way, then we'd be talking about, is the defense getting turnovers?
Mm-hmm.
How is Mason Rudolph and or Will Levis adapting to this offensive system and getting the ball to receivers like Calvin Ridley? I mean, there are just so many storylines that I think on paper take precedence over special teams, but special teams continues to make itself a really damning storyline for the Titans. And we saw it when they chose the 53-man roster. I mean, they cut players
that's
who were
where it started.
More optimal on special teams, like Hassan Haskins, over guys they thought could contribute depth-wise on either offense or defense. And at least as things stand right now, that is looking like it was not the right decision for this team.
And here's the thing with that roster choice in terms of who you're adding and keeping on special teams. That was one thing that I know Mike Vrabel had issues with special teams later on in his coaching tenure, because he wouldn't, again, fire Craig Ackerman, which clearly was not getting better at the mistakes. But there were bright spots on special teams in terms of individual play. And, Hassan Haskins, Anthony Kendall, some of those guys that had been on the roster in the past and they decided not to keep, or they took other players instead of them. I don't know whose choice that was, guys. That's where I'm confused. Was that a Colt Anderson? Like, these are the guys I'm handpicking, or is that more of a Brian Callahan? I want these other tight ends, because we know they kept all those tight ends on this roster.
Right.
Two of them who never play on game day. Like, you could have put some other special teams guys in their place. Like, those are the decisions. Like, I don't know if they're more Callahan or Colt Anderson. So I don't know what to say on that too, because I do think that's a big part of the special teams not getting better.
Yeah, and even like the return game, I'm starting to, and I really hate to say this, I'm starting to jump off of the Jaquan Jackson train, which I hate because he's such a great kid. But I'm like, I wonder if there's anyone else that could be more effective. Is Mason Kinsey more effective? I don't really know. Like, I don't know who else can return punts. I know that Kyle Phillips did it a little bit. Is he hurt?
He's not here anymore. They got rid of him.
He was cut.
Yeah.
Oh, he was cut.
I can't remember where he went, you guys. Well, you would never know, because he
went
never
like completely under the radar.
Yeah, that was kind of a silent one because he got
Oh
hurt
my
again.
God. Oh Lord. I gotta look that up.
Yeah,
Oh
he
my
got hurt again.
gosh.
So he gone.
Oh, he's in Philly. He's in Philly apparently. And I think honestly too, it made it even worse. I didn't even know that the Khalif Raymond kid played for
Played here.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, Khalif played here and actually had a good, really short stint here. Had done some really good things, but he's been way more productive in Detroit. Like they've actually kept him and given him an opportunity. Then clearly he burns the Titans, like every former Titan seems to do when they play the Titans. Is burn them.
Yeah.
What is that?
And to my point about special teams just not making itself a story, if they could have a returner who can return the ball for the Titans to the 40-yard line, or just you're kneeing it in the end zone. Half the time now they're kicking it out of the end zone anyway, seemingly on purpose with some of the new rules. So, I mean, I don't think that's a lot to ask. And then just, I don't know, don't give up a 72-yard return to the Lions. Like as long as if guys get a 20, 30, 40-yard return on you, okay, like I don't think that's going to be the story coming out of the game. And the Titans are just so far in both extremes in getting next to nothing from their punt and kick return and getting everything from the other team's punt and kick return units. And I just double checked the depth chart. They still have Tajay Spears and Tyler Boyd listed as the backup returners.
No, your starter should not be your core special teamers. And Tajay Spears is hurt.
And that's what I was going to say. How is it that one of your starting receivers, who was a significant acquisition in the offseason, right, that he is listed at all on your special teams depth chart?
That's bad.
This is bad.
I
want to say I think it was Buck. Maybe it was Buck after the game. He said like the Titans keep finding ways to lose. Yeah. Because let me tell y'all something. I was so worried about this game. I don't know why. I'm biased, obviously, but I was so worried about this game because I was like, this is going to be a trap game for Detroit. Like the Titans are coming in. All of these guys are not playing for the Titans anymore, but they're playing for the future of their careers, right? And so I was like, they could. So
you thought you'd get a desperation, like gritty performance.
Yes, which I feel like we saw early in the game. Like it was 14-14, and I was like, yeah, okay, Calvin Ridley looked great. He's out here playing. He's catching balls. Like they're getting him the football, and I was like, oh my God, we cannot. See me saying we.
Well, you're technically a part of this team now. Your fiance is a coach, so
you have the right to say
yes.
We.
Bobblehead back
here. Exactly.
We're all in.
I would be too, man. That they're winning. It looks like you guys are having fun.
Like, it is fun. Well, I was having fun later in the game, but early on, I was really scared. I was like, okay, like the Lions cannot stop Calvin Ridley until Mason Rudolph obviously has some costly turnovers. But they were playing, I thought, quality football early in the game.
They were.
I really did. I felt like the offense looked like they were clicking. And then I don't know what happened.
Well, that's the problem. I never felt at one point, even when they gave you false hope, I just didn't think that this was going to be a team that could pull it out. You know, want to know why? Because they haven't proven it once this season. In any way, they've looked good at parts of every game, except for maybe in the second half. They've not had good second halves. But in the first half, they have given glimpse of hope to the Tennessee Titans fan base. They have showed, oh my goodness, we can complete passes down the field to Calvin Ridley. He can be a part of this, team that we expected him, that we paid him to come here and do those types of things. But then, you guys, the minute that this team faces any type of adversity, they completely choke and they never recover, whether that be in the end of the first half, in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, wherever that adversity pops up, whether it be a turnover or a special teams blunder, they do not recover. And that is because this team clearly does not have a true identity yet. And the identity of this team right now is the mistake-prone Titans. And you cannot win games when you have that identity.
And there was a coach I covered in college basketball in my last market who would emphasize we have to win the last 5 minutes of the first half and the first 5 minutes of the second half. And that's going to pretty much dictate the outcome in the game, especially when you don't have a lights out roster that can just kind of turn it on and fix errors throughout the course of a game, which the Titans don't have, clearly. And those crucial moments going into halftime, coming out of halftime, have been detrimental for the Titans.
Great point.
I was doing some research earlier, and just for the sake of our show and things that we cover throughout the week, and the Titans have been outscored by 68 points in the second half over their 7 games. In the first half, the Titans have put up 77 points, by the way, in 7 games. So quick math, they're averaging 11 points in a first half, which still not great. But
is that at the bottom of the league?
I didn't look at the league standings for that, but Titans have 77 points in first halves, and their opponents have 85. That number was blown up by the 35 they gave up to Detroit. So the Titans, but prior to Detroit, were outscoring teams in the first half, and at least that's still a manageable number.
Sure.
But a 68-point differential when you look at second half scoring, you just aren't going to win ball games no matter what you do in the first half, and they have to find some way to remedy the team they are in and out of the halftime break and try and find some consistency.
Yeah, and one more number. Those are great numbers, Lauren, and really paints the picture. Another number that is just, for me, I can't say that this team is progressing, and I know Brian Callahan didn't think the team has regressed, but when the bad things outweigh the good things that the basic fan can't see, that to me is regression overall. And when you have a minus 13 turnover ratio, which is tied for first in the league with the lowly Las Vegas Raiders, that to me, that number's gotten crazier and crazier as the season's gone on. To me, like, that's pure regression because you're turning it over at a rapid rate and you're not getting enough turnovers on the other end. That is the worst type of football that could be played. That's the least complementary football that can be played. To me, that number has only gotten worse. Why do I feel like you've progressed then?
And if I'm the defense, because I didn't even realize this, I think it was Jimmy may have posted like the league standings. And I was like, okay, the Titans defense is not bad. They are at the top of the NFL. And so I'm like, if I'm the Titans defense, if I'm Denard Wilson, and we're like, I mean, even the way they made the Lions look, I mean, they had a few explosive plays, but really it was special teams. It was really turnovers on the defense, the Lions defense, that helped them win that game because offensively, they didn't really do anything. Jared Goff, he didn't even pass for 100 yards. Yeah, it was like, I mean, he was getting sacked. I think he got sacked like 4 times. Like, they were getting after it defensively. And so I'm like, if I'm the defense, I feel like I would feel a certain way. Like, I don't know. I'm like, like, we're doing everything that we're supposed to do on our end. And when the offense can't get it together, I don't know. I feel like there would be some frustration.
I feel like, to both of your points, and I said this to my coworkers, the Titans had over 400 yards of offense.
Yes.
14 points. The final score, 14 points. That is hard to do. It's difficult to pull off 400 plus yards of offense and 14 points. So that's an instance where if you were cherry picking stats, the Titans had all these total yards, outgaining Detroit, where the numbers don't tell the full story of the game because when you watch and look at all the short fields they gave the Lions and all of the and all the detrimental moments and special teams and all of that, the Titans are a tough watch, and I think they feel like it's a tough endeavor even playing with this group the more we talk to guys in the locker room because the frustration is just growing and growing. And I would feel similarly as someone who it still is extremely competitive and played competitive sports, at some point, something has to give in a continuous losing narrative.
Yeah. And one more thing I'll add to that. You're right. I mean, when you look at overall, the defense hasn't been perfect, but they did set them up in really bad positions. The special teams did, the turnovers on offense. You got, like I said, Lauren, you mentioned 5 times short field for the Detroit Lions. They were 5 for 5 in the red zone. So they definitely capitalized too. And that gets hard. Like, you start to feel that as a defense, the strain. So I think that's one thing. I know Jeffrey Simmons says we're not pointing fingers at all. And I understand that's a good thing. But at some point, if the offense and the special teams does not help out this team's defense, at some point, damn, I'm pointing the damn fingers. Screw this trying to be like a good citizen. I'm sitting in the locker room. I said, you get your shit together, offense.
Because I'm trying to figure out, like, when they were at the 1 yard line and you threw the ball 4 times, what? Who is Callahan? What are you doing? Run the ball. I mean, at some point you're gonna get the 1 yard. Like, why are you throwing the ball? That was the most embarrassing. And see, I was so like conflicted during this game because obviously, like, I've covered the Titans for 2 years, so I was just like this.
Yeah.
You're throwing the ball 4 straight times. Like, whose idea was that? I need to know.
Yeah, it was his.
I mean, it was Brian's. I know it was Brian's, but that had to be like the most embarrassing moment of that game.
Yeah. He said they were in a base defense, and we knew they were in a base defense, but you've got 4 opportunities. If it's not working for the first time you try to use your pass sequences, then screw, they're in a base defense. Give it to Tony Pollard. By the way, incredible in terms of contact or yards after contact this year with that running back. Like, give him an opportunity. He's been your best player on offense.
Yeah, let's get a tush push in there. Like, something.
Yeah.
Something, right?
To me, it was a much smaller scale Seahawks throwing in short yardage in the Super Bowl with the Pats with Marshawn Lynch.
Don't remind me of that. Jeez.
Sorry, Kayla.
God, that's one of the worst moments.
And it's not to say that everything's equal in those situations. Of course, they're not. But you have Tony Pollard in the backfield, who's been one of the most consistent players for the Titans on either side of the ball. And it just doesn't make sense from that short yardage to go 4 for 4 plays passing, almost no matter who your running back is, but especially given who the Titans quarterback is, how well Tony Pollard has been playing, some of the disconnections we've seen in the passing game as well. So that was puzzling, and I can only imagine the frustration level for Titans fans.
I have one more thing, and then we can go, because Lauren, I know you have to go. I didn't realize this until Sean brought this up. He was like, Brian Callahan didn't even call the plays in Cincinnati. No. Did y'all know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Zach Taylor
This is his first time calling the plays.
Yeah.
Right.
He
was more of the Nick Holtz role.
Yeah. Yes.
In Cincy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. I didn't even realize that.
I know when I talked to my connection over there while the coaching process was happening, and I did ask about that. And the person that I know over there said he was heavily involved in the play calling aspect of setting things up, but that might have been more so the scripted part, clearly. And I think that's where we've seen the issues too, is once that script goes away, he's learning on the job in terms of that type of play calling. And that doesn't happen overnight, but you got to start to progress somehow, because I just don't think that's been good enough too.
Yeah. Well, that was a great show, ladies. If
Yeah.
y'all are still here, drop down in the comments and let us know what you thought of today's episode.
Yes. And if you ever want to talk, if you ever have a suggestion of what we can talk about, because we're open to a lot, I always like to hear what, the listeners want to hear from our perspectives too. So drop us a line there.
Yeah. And it was great to get together as always. We're looking forward to more episodes and maybe integrating some fun guests and insightful guests that we're lucky to be friends with in this business. So I think we have good things to come.